What's happening, everybody? My name is Matt Mosveen, and you are on air with Radio Chatter. Joining us on the flight deck today, who are you?
My name is Justin Say, and I create videos on YouTube for the last decade, and we primarily cover consumer tech, but we've also branched out into travel, lifestyle, and also real estate and interiors. And yeah, this is a really cool experience, so thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us here at 9,500 feet, Justin Say. We are over Mount Olympus right now. You're ready to fly, right? You gonna give this a try?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you let me know how my flying is, but based on some practice on the F1 sim, I think it'll be an interesting one.
We'll see how Justin Say does in a couple questions here, but without further ado, let's get started. Let's start out with the origin story. I'm just kidding. We're not actually going to start with the origin story, but you've been creating videos since you're about 12, 13 years old. Your parents thought you were crazy early on. So here we are over a decade later. You have several employees, you have several properties, and your business is literally taking off. So one thing I've noticed is how remarkably open you are about things that I have a feeling a lot of like creators would be hesitant about sharing. So like how much money we earn on brand deals, or like personal weaknesses or strengths or whatever. So I'd love to learn if that's always how it's been. Like, how did you get to this stage of being kind of default open book?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to making videos, you kind of just speak your mind. And in the beginning, whenever it's just a hobby, you give your authentic opinion towards the products. And as you start to show more of your life when it comes to a lifestyle standpoint, I think people get to know you a little bit better as you just speak about the things that you enjoy, maybe some ideas and things that you've learned over the years. And especially because I grew up on the internet from the age of 12 and saw the industry and learned it throughout the years and kind of observed the surroundings, but have also been a beneficiary of this growing market. I think the best thing that any creator can do is to share everything that they've learned to people out there and show them that it's totally possible to do it themselves. When I was just starting to make videos at the age of 12, it was simply a hobby. Saved up for an iPod and just filmed with whatever resources we had, tried to scrape by and make some money to be able to buy the next camera, and everything in terms of time, money, and like lifestyle was invested back into creating videos. And over the years, the industry and influencer marketing and everything has developed to the point where we've kind of had to adapt the business a few times, learn new things, make some mistakes. And even today, we're still learning a ton of different things, especially as we branch out into multiple industries. So I think being fully transparent is something that I've always liked doing. People I meet, I'm happy to tell them about it. And also like on the YouTube comments, you always get comments of people seeing the young age and the things that you have, and they like to question it. And so I think the easiest answer to that is telling them exactly how it was done and how many years it took to get here, but also I don't even like to call it sacrifices because it's something that I enjoy doing, but the fact that the whole lifestyle now is still built around this business.
Right. Yeah, like it's at the end of the day, it's just choices, and like you're making a lot of choices doing things that you really like to do. I guess that's going back to like the early days of it. That's an interesting point. Like how many years did it take you to like sign your first deal or like make your first like endorsement or sponsorship or whatever it was?
Yeah, I think what people don't know about the social media industry, and especially when it comes to making videos or Instagram, is that it takes a very long time to make any money on it, and it's even harder to generate a living, let alone a living that allows you to hire a team and be at a point where you can also invest outside of just making content and continuing to produce that content. So for the first few years, my AdSense account made like a penny. And I was losing money creating content, but it was something that I enjoyed doing. Brand deals weren't really a thing at the time. There were a few big creators, but it was like maybe 3 or 4 years after YouTube existed. So it was still really early. But it kind of just stuck to the industry, continued to make videos about things that I was excited about. But as a result of building that following, when the opportunities did come, the channel was ready for it. But it wasn't a fast growth. I think it took 3 or 4 years to hit the first 100,000 subscribers. It took 1 to 2 years to be able to get our first free product. And it took, I think, almost 5 years before we got our first brand deal. And doing brand deals that year was something that was new to me because previous to that, we never made any money off of our videos. And to be paid for making videos, it was definitely something that I thought was pretty cool. But as a result, it was probably one of the biggest mistakes and one of the biggest learning lessons of the channel to date. I took every single brand deal that year and continued to invest it in the business, but didn't realize how big of a negative impact it had on the growth of the channel. And so it kind of took a recalibration at the end of that year when I took a look at the growth relative to the deals that we took before we were able to completely reinvent the channel. And I feel like you have to do that many times in every few years, both in terms of the content and also the business strategy.
That's a really interesting point. Like, so love to dive into that a little bit more. Like, did you take on deals that were like off-brand or bad deals, and you were kind of just like taking anything you could get, or like how did that negatively impact the channel?
Yes and no. It was there were some platforms that allow you to apply for brand deals, and the first few deals were maybe $500. And before, I was generating all my income off selling stuff for $10 to $20.
Right.
And so being able to make $500 off a video that took the same amount of time as making a quick 10-minute case video was just very new to me. And even before I was making YouTube videos, I guess I was always very interested in finding ways to make money and save up for stuff. And my parents had taught me that way as well, by giving us like the basic resources to education, food, and but other than that, when it comes to wanting things, it was up to me to save up for myself. And I think that was a huge learning lesson. And by gathering the resources to start the business and to build it over the years are still skills that we apply to today at a different scale.
Mom, if you're listening, the same thing for me. Like, I had to save up to buy a cell phone when I wanted one, and I had to like start working when I was 12 years old.
Yeah. Everyone else had a smartphone at school, it seemed like, and so funny enough, as a smartphone reviewer, I was the last one in my class to get a smartphone. I didn't have any data, didn't have texting. My first iPhone, I think, was like a water damaged one, and I just like fixed it and used that for the first couple of years. And otherwise, it was just scraping by. And by the end of high school, companies started sending smartphones out. And so I'd have like 15 phones in the backpack. And whenever people were kind of trying to figure out what phone to buy, I would kind of be like a mobile showroom, or what's it called? A mobile store.
Step right up and you have like a trench coat full of sketchy iPhones.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. I thought it was cool at the time, but I don't know. I think I definitely got laughed at.
You go back to, so you started the channel before brand deals were a thing, basically. Did I get that right?
Yeah, it was like probably 4 or 5 years before brand deals were a thing. So you really did have to love it to join that industry. But I think the weird thing is I wasn't really into videography, photography. I didn't know how to use a camera or anything. I just kind of watched a lot of videos when I was researching my first iPod and saving up for it, and saw a lot of people getting free stuff. And so I figured, like, when I get this iPod, I'm going to want to buy the next iPod. So the easiest way to do that, I guess, or the long way to do that, is to make YouTube videos, try to get some free stuff, and then sell it. But it kind of went down this rabbit hole of being like the most inefficient way of making money, but it led to the career it is today.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously it takes a long time, but like at the same time, like you were so early on with it, and a lot of people probably think that like, oh, you know, the opportunity's already gone. Like you were in early, so like what's the opportunity like starting now for anybody who's kind of thinking about that?
It's funny because I think with any industry, there's no bad time to start. If you're the early ones in, there aren't many resources for you out there. There aren't many opportunities either. And so if you're not passionate about it and you don't allocate the time, you don't like sacrifice any time, it makes it very hard to justify in the beginning. And so that's why I encourage people to start at as young of an age as possible, because you're at school, maybe you're living in your parents' house. You don't really have to worry about giving up like family time or take time off work to be able to work on some of your side hobbies or interests. And so even though I would say it was like my channel would be where it is today if it wasn't started back then, because our content is simply not like unique to the point where if we started it today, it would perform like the way it is.
Yep.
I would also say that by starting today, even though it is a very crowded industry, there are a lot more opportunities. There are a lot more brands that know how to work with creators. And there's also a lot more resource and data that you can utilize to your advantage. So I think starting like 10 years ago or starting now has its own benefits and drawbacks. But at the end of the day, I would say you could argue for both.
You just got to get started. That's the common thread between
and especially as young as possible, because I was like 12 or 13 and didn't have anything better to do. But I think what I'd like to say now is the reason why it's where it's at today is because I didn't stop making content. Like there were definitely times where it didn't really make sense. The channel might have been underperforming, but by sticking to it over the years, whether the industry was doing well or not, was kind of just the bottom line. I kind of tell people like some people can grow 700,000 subs in a couple months. For us, it took 12 years. And even though we want to be at 1 million or 2 million, for example, it's still at a point where at the age of 12, I wouldn't have expected it to I guess progress to that, whether we stuck to it or not.
You've obviously built your life around your business, and you love what you do, so it doesn't feel like work, which is great. Walk us through your vision for Feature Media and the channel.
It's a good question. I think at this point, it's always about finding things that keep things exciting, but also continuing to push the limits and leverage of the company. I think the tech industry is one that's good to be in because there are plenty of opportunities. There always has been and there always will be. And even during the pandemic, it was an industry that was actually thriving from it. And so, although a lot of creators that I met a decade ago are still creating the same tech videos, my interest in tech has actually changed over the years, where although we enjoy covering it, it definitely isn't my primary interest. And the things that kind of interest me in life right now are real estate, making properties over, having income streams from Airbnbs, for example. But I think the biggest thing that has changed over the years has been the amount of travel. Traditionally, when you first start your channel, it's like a lonely few years in the parents' basement where you don't talk to anybody, you don't leave the house, and you're fully dialed into your business and trying to maximize the amount of time that you spend on it. But as a result of like dropping out of university, the first thing that I wanted to do is be able to fly around the world and make connections. And I think the craziest thing, what will always still be something that that I'm very grateful for, is there's very few jobs in the world where we can say that we're getting paid to travel for free. And getting to enjoy the destination, do what we want, film whatever we want, and have that creative flexibility from the brands that have seen the past content and found ways to integrate it with technology and the product story, but at the same time, just showing the place that we are and being able to deliver that content in an interesting way. So I think what I've especially been trying to do with Feature and the way I've been trying to construct my team has been just always bringing exciting opportunities that are not only exciting for myself, but also for the team. To help everyone feel that we not only have a very powerful product, channel, and content stream in our hands, both in terms of following and also the capabilities of the video quality that we're able to produce, but at the same time, we're just scratching the surface. Like 100 videos a year means every video is pretty quickly produced.
Right.
And so by meeting that quantity goal of 100 videos a year while still trying to continuously improve the quality is a constant battle that we're always going to have. So there really isn't like an end point. We're always going to be trying to find ways to improve. We're going to try and find ways to be more creative and also find more ways to make connections. So an example could be my interest in Formula One and trying to find connections through that space. That was very difficult, and it wasn't as easy as just getting a tech brand deal. The same goes for travel boards, maybe going with hotels, working with Airbnb, for example. Those are all deals where it almost feels like trying to explain your entire company all over again and pitching in a way that I might have had to do back in 2012 when it was just a new channel as a new entrant in the tech industry, and having to explain the value that we can provide for brands and also pivoting it specifically to their industry.
That's super interesting because, yeah, like I think we were talking about this when we went for dinner the other night. Like the best salespeople they're pitching the same product, but like a completely different way to a completely different customer and finding a way to connect the right neuro pathways where it makes sense.
Absolutely.
So that's super valuable, and that's a really cool way of looking at kind of the next steps in your journey, because there's a lot of things that, like, looking back 10 years ago, you probably wouldn't have been able to predict right now, and looking in the future 10 years, you won't be able to predict what those things are, but what you can be sure of is that, like, you have the skills, the network, the resources to provide value to somebody in the form of content, and so you're going to be able to find the right notes to hit on to provide that value at that time. So
for sure, I think we talked about this at dinner about how like our day jobs both involve a lot of sales, and it's like selling the same product but in multiple different ways. And especially through our online course, we talk about how important it is to have basic best practices, but also being able to read the responses and the reach out from brands to be able to determine where their stance is, what their strategy is, and also being able to apply things specifically. So, for example, a tech pitch and a travel pitch is completely different, but one way to be able to look at it is as a tech channel, we're able to explain to a travel board that we're able to highlight the technical innovation aspect of their country, because we may not be able to produce the same type of travel content as someone who produces travel videos every single day. And so by coming in with a different angle and explaining to them that the content that we're going to be able to produce is a little bit different, but is able to show a different approach that every other creator has been how we've been able to enter new industries and be able to get these opportunities, even though it's not our primary focus. And so, yeah, like with sales, I think it's all about intuition. And that's kind of why I dropped out of university, because I felt like it was just far too technical and people were getting graded on their technicalities, which to some degree is important. But I think what separates a good salesperson with a great salesperson is someone who's able to take a look at any given product or brand that they have and be able to pitch it in different ways where it explains value that interests the other party.
Dude, I see the moves that you're making, like so far, at least. So we've got like the channel blossoms into a media company, looking all the way back. And then we bring properties into the mix, like Airbnbs, The Office. Next, we've got a clothing company, like just zooming out to the wider, like entrepreneurial portfolio, you could say. So Dangerfield in downtown Victoria. You recently released a course to teach people the business side of YouTube. And so I know there's probably like several acquisitions or moves that you have planned over the next couple of years. So I actually want to kind of zoom out for that and thinking even further out, like what's a ridiculous like thing you want to buy or thing that you want to start that's a little bit more like grandiose and aspirational way in the future?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about being in the same industry for many years is that you have goals that you set, but then by the time you reach those goals, you're already looking into the next 5 years. And so when I first got my office at the time, it was probably a goal that I had a few years prior because I was renting my parents' basement for that.
Right.
And eventually to also own Airbnb property, that was also one that I had a few years ago. And the timing and the property came up and everything kind of worked out. But looking 5 years, I think the last 10 years of the career has always been trying to look forward the next few years and always having that fear of whether you're going to reach where you want to at the given time. And so when I was like 19 or 20, I would always have a ton of anxiety over whether I was going to reach the revenue goals of what I wanted to by the age of 21 or by 22. And I just found that to be kind of pointless. I think especially now and after meeting Damien, for example, and having Trevor on the team, everybody has a very different perspective to life. And I'm being taught more to enjoy things in the moment. Because by always looking ahead when you're traveling, I was thinking like, okay, well, we have like this video to film on the next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but I'm in Paris on Wednesday. And like, it's sort of like you can't control what's in the future. Well, you can set yourself up properly, but I think because the business has been relatively successful for quite a few years now, there's less stress factor on how it's going to do. And so you kind of step like back a little bit. Basis. Yeah, there's definitely big goals, but I think always looking back and saying like, well, my 12-year-old self would have been very happy with where it is right now, even if it was to end today, is where I kind of find comfort in trying to enjoy the moment a little bit more. But it is still always hard to like kind of, okay, like don't think about it too far. In terms of like a big goal or like a crazy acquisition, I've said for many years now that I would love to own a hotel. And applying things that I enjoy from hotels, hospitality, and travel, and also getting rid of all the pain points into an ultimate experience that I'm passionate about from both the design and experience standpoint. So that's been a goal for a while, to own like a hotel experience and have properties around the world that ties together real estate, social media, hospitality, and just like the aspect of running a business.
It's time for Deal Hacks with your boy Justin Say. So this is a game, and if you have, so I'm going to ask you a couple skill testing questions first, and if you have the right answer to those skill testing questions, it means you qualify to answer the $1 million question at the end of it. So you give creators advice all the time, and now it's your turn to give advice to brands on how to successfully run deals with creators and influencers. So I've got some rapid fire questions here. Are you ready? Okay, so if you got a brand and they're proposing a deal to a creator, and they invite you to go out for a dinner. Who pays for the dinner?
The brand has to pay for the dinner.
Right. Yeah.
I think there has been scenarios where the brand has brought us out for dinner, and let's just say it ended up getting used against them.
That's more for another day. As a brand, which channel should you use to reach out to the creator? So email, DM, phone call. What's preferable there?
I think email is probably the best one. Most of the time, if a creator gets a phone call out of nowhere, it's very confusing as to how they got that phone number. And the thing with Instagram DMs is there's just too many sometimes. So I would say email is probably the best way to reach out. Some people aren't really good at checking their emails, but it's funny. If you look at my phone, I don't like phone calls. And so you look at the phone app, and then you'll see what's the app in the middle?
What are your bottom four? That's like a classic podcast question.
So I have phone calls, text messages, and email. And so phone calls, 178 missed calls because I hate answering the phone even though I'm on it all day. Text messages, 104, but then emails at 28, and it can often be at 0. So
you heard it here.
Email is the best way to reach out, but there's also people who abuse the whole like business inquiries only thing and just send some random
spam
stuff, So
if you're a brand, how many influencers should you try hitting up to find the right fit for a campaign? Like, obviously, if you only hit up one, they might not even respond. But like, you don't want to hit up like 30 or I don't even know what's the number.
That's a really good question. For a creator and the way we teach in our course, you could probably tell if they've emailed 30 different creators. A lot of times, a brand will make a very specific pitch and tie in the aspects of your content and your style and how it aligns with their campaign. And for a creator, it makes it a lot easier to be able to come up with a vision and also a pitch. But there are certain emails that are sent out to a whole blast of creators and they try to put together. And a lot of times the issue with that is if the creator spends a lot of time chatting with the brand and going over the creative concept and there isn't a deal, it doesn't really help the relation in the long run. At the same time, though, it is true that there are a lot of agencies that do need to reach out to a lot of creators in order to get them interested. And they have to be able to fill a certain quota or use up the entire budget that they've been given from the brand. And so in that case, I think it makes sense. But the biggest mistake that brands make, that's like a red flag straight off the bat, is if you CC all 30 creators in the same email thread,
that's brutal.
It's just not going to get a response. It's going to go automatically to the spam box. But occasionally you do get the creator that accidentally replies with their rate to the entire thread. And it's very embarrassing for them.
Last skill testing question. Is it better to reach out to the agent or to the creator directly?
It's a bit of a mixed one. It depends on the industry that you're in. Because in my industry, if it reaches the agent, there is sometimes a chance that it won't make it to the creator. And the way I look at our YouTube channel in particular is that even though revenue and rate is a very, very important part of deciding which deals we do, there's also a ton of experiences that I'm willing to trade for content, such as being able to go to Italy, being able to go to Dubai, and we find other ways to monetize it on our own. But for example, the agent takes a commission off what you get paid. And so if there's like an extraordinary opportunity that's worth $100,000, but you're not getting paid for it, the agent's not going to spend his time when he's working on deals that are actually paying $100,000 to be able to execute that. And so he might see it as a simple waste of time, whereas we might see it as like an experience that is inspirational to our content and like a perfect ad slot for something else. In my case, I'd rather the brand reach right out to me and then I'll divert it over to my agent or agents, depending on which one is the best fit for that campaign. And there's also some that we manage in-house. And so I'd say the biggest deals have all been done in-house just because we're able to put together a fully custom pitch and actually prepare for it, whereas the agent has a more standardized response where it's just down to the numbers and nothing else. And they don't really explain the value and leverage of the past content we created in the travel space or, for example, in the home space.
That's a pro tip right there, guys.
The agent plays like the numbers game, essentially. For every like 10 bad deals that he turns down, he's going to miss one or two of them that are good. So he has like he catches red flags a lot quicker. But
pretty good batting average.
Yeah, it's a good batting average. But at the same time, the way I want to run the business is to get every single thing that's on the table. And so by sending it to the correct agent, even if it seems like a bit of a waste of time, can still pay off really big as it adds up.
It's time for the $1 million question. Are you ready?
Yep.
What is the best way, maybe you already said this earlier, but the best way for a brand to piss off a creator or influencer?
Ooh. It's tough because whenever the brand has too many restrictions and too many requests, the creator almost feels like they didn't do their research beforehand and just let you do your thing. But at the same time, we understand when there are certain campaigns that are really strict. I think like within reason, there are a lot of revisions in this industry that are just a little bit ridiculous, and they don't really make any logical sense. But I think easily the thing that would piss me off the most is if a brand had guidelines, but they didn't tell you until they requested the revision. So it's sort of like, well, it doesn't make any sense, but also like, why did you tell us before we went and filmed all this?
And made the video and did all the editing. Hustle culture was super big during the rise of Instagram. I'd say like between 2012 and 2018 or so. And I think people were trying to like dunk on one another back then, like flexing how many like hours there were today.
Yeah.
And now over the last couple of years, we've sort of seen the rise and fall, and people are actually condemning hustle culture now in favor of 4-hour work weeks and whatnot. So I'd love to kind of hear you weigh in on the topic, work-life balance.
Yeah, I totally agree that there's both sides to it of how it's like cool to always be working, and a lot of people might like glorify that. But at the same time, there's also something interesting about somebody who barely works any hours but still able to make a lot of money. On social media, people actually assume that we don't do shit. For most of the day, there's like, oh, you're traveling, you look like you've been on vacation or whatever. And I'm like, wait till you see the behind the scenes, because there's a lot of stuff going on all the time. In terms of work-life balance, it's interesting because I grew up in a family where my dad was, he was always working. On weekends, he would always work, and he was very committed to that. And I remember growing up, I was like, well, I want to own my own business someday, and my dad always just like kind of laughed, like he's like, it's not that easy. You have a lot of responsibility, but you also have to put in the most amount of time. And so when I first started doing YouTube, it was always trying to fight between spending time on school and putting very minimal effort into it and the stuff that my parents wanted me to do, but also being able to spend time on stuff that I personally enjoyed. And so like growing up, I had to learn Chinese and piano, which I still hate to this day, both of them, and I don't use either of them. But it made me find creative ways to be able to produce videos like 2 hours a day and find that window and really value time in a way where if I was given a free range to be able to do whatever I want, I probably would have just like played video games with my neighbor. And even through university, I really didn't want to be there from the start to finish, but like going home for lunch and filming a video in an hour, or like pretending to do homework, but like quickly knocking out a video, or like every Friday after class, I would have all my notes prepped in class, send out hundreds of emails, over-plan the videos, only to be ready to film them like at Friday and be able to publish them on Saturday and Sunday. I kind of had this routine in university where, I would plan the video throughout the week, 2 videos, and I would film on Friday and Saturday. And on Sundays, I would starve myself until that video is uploaded. And I would go to Mucho Burrito and Starbucks every single week as soon as that Sunday video was uploaded. And from there, the business grew to 6 figures in university. And that started to prove that like maybe university doesn't make that much sense to go to, because I felt like I wasn't gaining much value out of the core business program. I felt like it was too theory focused. I didn't have very good grades because I didn't really like. I felt like I already knew how to run a business, but on the black and white like test standpoint, I wasn't doing very well because I would overthink the responses based on being a business owner versus what is like by the books. Right. So yeah, like marketing, I had to like rewrite the test, which is kind of funny because I was in the marketing industry. Accounting, like
that's ironic.
Financial and like corporate accounting, I'm just bad at that, so that made sense. But I did gain a little bit of value from that class. But yeah, the whole throughout school, I was just always really busy and always very focused on the business. And even though I may have sacrificed like a social life and a lot of that personal life, one thing that I'll never have a regret for is the amount of time that I put into it in the early years and staying disciplined as a teenager. But also that I still spent as much time as possible with family. Like I visited every single day, and instead of hanging out with my friends, I would literally hang out with my family no matter what. And then I'd go back to working on videos and go home and edit. Even if I was getting off a flight for 10 minutes, I would go stop by at home and make sure I said hi every day. And there was also scenarios at school where class would end on Friday. I'd get on a flight on Friday, and then I'd land 7 a.m. on Monday, and then get to class at 8 o'clock. And so doing that really, I guess, solidified that I wanted to do YouTube full time. But I don't regret going to school for 3 years because I wouldn't have valued time the way that I did when I did have the chance to go full time if I was just given that option right away. So not only did I meet some of the most important members of my team today, and who have helped change the business significantly, but at the same time, I think the reason why I still spend all my time on it now is because, well, you've gone this far, and you could either just be satisfied with it, or you continue to push it as far as possible, knowing that you've already sacrificed everything for it.
So just do what you love, and that's all that matters. That's like common advice or things that you might hear. It's a common narrative. So I guess why is that good, or maybe bad advice?
Business people always say, like, do what you love and the money will come. And I agree to that to some degree, but there are definitely some industries where it's like you can be as passionate about it as you want, and it'll be very difficult. So you have to align your personal goals and your lifestyle with what you do to some degree. But I feel like at the same time, there are always opportunities or ways to be able to take something that you're interested in and turn it into a living. So yeah, for example, there are a ton of different like YouTube related industries that people are passionate about, and they're a lot harder to become profitable, but they still find a way and they create an industry for themselves. Yeah, it might be like an uphill battle, but you have to be very passionate about it, and people can tell if you're very passionate about it to be able to build a sector of your own. And we've seen it all the time. Tech industry was a niche at some point too. Every industry is a niche. People have to innovate and pave the way for that industry, but then for the new people who come in, they have to find ways to continue to innovate because it's a crowded space already. Because like travel, for example, is an industry that's known to not pay very well. People in that space are more willing to take free experiences in exchange for content and exposure, whereas people in tech want to make money. And so I think the tangent of our channel and how it's been able to become a very profitable and lucrative industry is because we're fully in technology, but the way we've been able to justify travel is by tying an industry that does pay very well with an industry that doesn't, but we would actually enjoy, and still making it worthwhile by combining them together.
I love it. It's such a good overlap. It's such a good combination, and that's why there's no like one answer to anything. Like, should you do what you're passionate about? Yes, but like you should also think about the not just, I don't want to say the dollars and cents side of it. You should think of like the viability of it, really.
Yeah.
It's time for a game called Did You Dabble With It? So I've got some subjects, topics, pastimes here, and some of them have some truth to them, and some of them are a complete shot in the dark. So I'll say the subject, and then you say if you did indeed dabble with it. Let's get started. The Rolex Oyster Perpetual.
So when I was looking at Rolexes and was very curious, the Oyster Perpetual was at a price point where it was kind of the entry level of Rolex. I think it was like $5,000 at the time.
Yep.
My friend was like, yeah, you want to buy one? And I said, it's an absolute ripoff. Who's stupid enough to spend that much on a watch? It's useless. I'm going to lose it or break it. And so I did dabble with it.
Sounds good. Activated charcoal toothpaste.
No, but I'm curious about it.
Getting weekly haircuts.
Yes. I used to get it twice a week, but realized I looked really stupid with a fresh lineup. You gotta let it grow back.
La Liga.
Haven't.
No dabble. Range Rover Velar.
Yes.
Playing the goaltender in hockey.
Yes. A little bit short for that, but I was better at that than a player because I was too lazy to skate.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Kombucha.
Yes. Had it 2 days ago.
Drive to Survive.
Yes.
LED mood lighting.
Yes. Dabbled.
Big dabble. Pre-rinsing your dishes before putting them in the dishwasher.
Absolutely not.
What's the point of a dishwasher if you have to do work?
What's the point of dishes? Just use paper plates.
Making questionably legal modifications to cars.
Not at all.
All stock, all off the factory.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really care for it.
Last but not least, Porsche.
It's my dream car.
Why do you like Porsche so much? Did you see
I don't know. It's
a particular one when you were a kid?
Not really. I didn't really like cars when I was a kid at all.
Oh, really?
Like, I wanted a PT Cruiser, which is really embarrassing because I bought a book that had like Ferrari Enzo and it had like McLaren's, all these cars in there. And for some reason, like the one car I thought was cool looking was a PT Cruiser. And then for a bit, I wanted a Mini Cooper.
It's kind
and
of
now I think like those are two of the ugliest cars that there is. But I don't know, just something about it. I've always wanted a Porsche, but I don't know. I'm not like that attached to to cars. There isn't like a certain car that I've wanted since I was a kid.
So I'd love to talk about some more tangible stories and kind of. So we'll start up with one of my favorite debates, which is would you rather be a specialist or a generalist?
It's tough to say. I think to be a specialist, you have to be a bit of a generalist. Especially if you look at the YouTube industry, for example. I do feel like in this YouTube industry, you might say like I might be a specialist of YouTube and maybe too obsessed with YouTube. But at some point, I did also have to run every aspect of the business. And so you do have to be a bit of a generalist as well.
A while back, you recognized that YouTube rewards watch time, so you started making longer videos. And now here we are in 2022 in short form videos, whether it's Reels or TikTok or YouTube Shorts. That's what platforms are really pushing at this point. So how are you modifying your strategy to try to balance the both out?
I think it's good that YouTube is our main platform, because I feel like that's always going to be the most enriched medium of giving the most information in the most detail and being able to share your knowledge. But there's also an art form to being able to contain all the information within 1 minute, 30 seconds, or 15 seconds. And from what I've seen, whenever it comes to an algorithm or a platform, people in the industry like to complain about it as like I don't like this medium, this is taking over. It's similar to how like whenever we go on trips, journalists kind of look down on YouTubers because we're like the new wave. We're a lot younger. Like a lot of these trips that like Damien and I go on, we're the youngest by like 10 to 15 years, and we're getting better access at like Apple and all that than the journalists. And so instead of adapting on their end, taking advantage of the new industry and realizing that things change and trends change and attention spans change, I think the most important thing to do to be able to stay in the industry and continue to do well in it is to take your strengths, but also be aware of the new platforms and the new mediums and what they demand. I feel like Instagram is very underutilized in the consumer tech platform. People like just post pictures of tech. They're like, well, Instagram's kind of lame. They don't like being associated with influencers. But we've seen tremendous value from Instagram alone, where the brand deals are actually larger than YouTube sometimes. They're a lot easier to make. The content is a lot more authentic. So on my Instagram, I'm posting like whatever. There might be a brand deal, and then the next clip, it's like Damien wearing a mask on his head. Or I forgot what the thing was the other day. That was like right before the OnePlus post, but just being very casual. And I found it's a place where people who follow you on YouTube who want to learn more about the behind the scenes and lifestyle can get like a direct view of that. Because honestly, I'm pretty lazy about like social media. Like I don't really like posting that much. Like when I'm on trips and stuff, I almost just like want to put my phone away. But by posting a quick story or something, it's really just take out your camera, don't think too much about it, and it's good to go.
I love it. One more for you here. What might just be the biggest up you've ever made?
I've been very excited for this question because it's one of those stories where the biggest mess up ended up leading to the biggest opportunity.
Love to see it. I can't wait.
So when I first started getting to travel for work, I almost like didn't believe that companies wanted to physically fly us to places. So the first few offers, I thought I was just getting scammed and was going to get like kidnapped when I landed.
Oh my God. Like there has to be an ulterior motive here.
Yeah. Like it was too good to be true.
Yeah. Exactly.
But it was funny. I think this was back in 2016. So I would have been 1 year out of university, and I wanted to start to branch out into cars because I was like, I kind of like filming cars, you know. So I emailed Jaguar Land Rover, and I was like, can I borrow a Range Rover, and can I drive it to Banff, which is like 1,000-kilometer drive. And like no company would ever let you drive a fleet car 1,000 kilometers, and I had never driven that far. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, can I take the car out? And I was too young to drive the car by about 6 years. Because I was like 19 at the time, I think.
Wow.
And so he was like, well, you want to come to Formula E? And I was like, sure, I'll go. I don't even know what it is, but I was gone for 6 days. They like took you to the parties, which were crazy. The drivers were there. Everyone was like super well dressed, and I had no idea what to expect. So I show up with a gray, like you guys know, the gray UVic hoodies. I show up with a gray UVic hoodie, zebra Yeezys, and like gray shorts. And it's like the most obnoxious dress code I could have worn in the worst way possible.
Not intentionally, like you just didn't. That's just
I
what
don't
came
know.
to
My
mind.
parents definitely told me like wear a dress shirt or whatever it is, but I didn't listen. Obviously, I had to learn it the hard way. But I'm trying not to make the story too long. But we were in Toronto for the first few days, and then we had to go on a 7-hour drive to Montreal for the Formula E weekend, which was a street race. It was super nice. But I got paired up with a guy who, like, the next youngest guy on that trip was at least a decade older than me, and he was in like a rock band T-shirt. So I'm like, okay, I'm fine. I'm not like dressed that badly. And we meet in the lobby for dinner that day, and he's in a red suit and a bow tie. and I'm in those same shorts and hoodie that I was wearing all day, and there wasn't any time to change. And so we go to this like nice restaurant in Montreal. It was like some like 1800s restaurant.
That's
and
sick.
I'm like covering my legs with like a tablecloth, and I happen to be sitting right next to the CEO of Jaguar, and I'm like, oh my god, like I embarrassed the rep because like he's the one who invited me, and I just look so stupid here. And so on top of that, when it came to race day, I was just like, I don't know, I tripped on a plastic bag and I smashed my camera in like 4 pieces, and it was one that I was borrowing too, so that wasn't good. And so yeah, I shot all the photos on an iPhone, and I don't know if they know that to this day, but yeah, it was all shot on an iPhone because I dropped the camera before the race. But that was sort of a trip where it was only 5 people invited because it was very exclusive to go with the team and get to go in the garage and walk on the track. And from the other reps, they had said like, this guy, he's got a very small circle, and he's brought you on this trip as like a experiment for social media because he's usually in corporate communications. And so after that trip, I told my parents, I was like, yeah, I didn't dress that well. Like, didn't make that good of an impression. I dropped the camera, and they're like, I told you so, you're an idiot. And which is true. And for years I got grilled for it. They're like, oh, remember that time I told you to do this or that, and you didn't. And so I was just like, man, I'm never going to get invited to that again. And so 5 years later, this rep gets hired by the Vietnamese electric car company.
Right.
And he remembered me from back then, and I was like, well, I couldn't have made a worse impression at the time. But I guess I was the only YouTuber he knew, and he'd been following the journey on like Instagram and seen what I've been doing on LinkedIn as well, because I find LinkedIn's a really good platform to show what we're working on.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he reached out, and as a result, it ended up being one of our biggest partners this year to get to go to Vietnam and make some commercials and be a Canadian ambassador for the brand.
So it all worked out in the end. Not so bad.
Yeah, you could say it's a little bit lucky because I mean the dress code. I mean it was bad. It was as bad as I possibly could have been dressed for dinner.
All right, guys, it's the moment that we've all been waiting for. Justin, my control column is attached to yours for a reason. So, how would you like to fly? Do you want to start flying?
Yeah, I'll be like the guy driving a car in Grand Theft Auto and trying to stay within the lines. And instead of doing anything too crazy, we're just gonna go straight like a commercial jet.
Yeah, as boring as possible. That's like kind of the joke in the aviation community is like our job is to make flying as boring as possible. But in either case, yeah, your seat's pulled up so you can put your hands on the controls here. Here we are over Mount Olympus. Absolutely beautiful. I'm going to add a little bit of power. I've been kind of conserving some of our fuel, but
I wouldn't mind landing here.
I wish we could. We're in another country. Did you bring your passport?
Damien probably has his passport in his pocket.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit dicey to land on top of a mountain, but we could try when you're on a
I mean, I saw it took off. It took off pretty easily, so like you don't need much runway.
So basically, here's the gist of it. You want to keep the horizon and the instrument panel like a constant distance the whole time. So right now we're flying straight and level, and so basically hold this picture, and then you can cross-check the instruments. And if you see this guy pointing up, it means we're going up. You see this pointed down, means they're going down.
So try to stay at 0.
Basically, try to keep the vertical speed at 0, yeah. Go ahead and push on the control column and just see how that feels. Like, give it a nice little bump. You're not pushing very hard if you are.
Try not to get anybody sick.
And then give it a little, like, back pressure, too. There you go. So it's like, I don't know, it's pretty sensitive.
Yeah, it is. It's almost like when you first start driving a car. And I remember when I was first driving, my dad was wondering why I wasn't like micro jittering it. He was just like, you're holding the steering wheel like too stiff. You have to like make micro adjustments. And so I guess in this case, it's sort of overcompensating in the beginning, right?
Yeah, a little
overcorrection
bit.
A little bit.
It's easy to over control the plane. So if you had to pick one, it would be like you want to under control it a little bit.
It's weird how it doesn't have like a locking mechanism for the steering just to stay in this position.
Oh, it does.
It does?
Let it go for a sec. What would happen? So like this, that's what the trim would be for. So make sure you've got locked in the up and down position. I'm actually going to trim it slightly forward. Cool. So let's we're going to do a turn. So before we do, I'm going to ideally try to teach like positive habits. So let's look for traffic to the left. Do you see any traffic?
You see any planes? No,
no
I don't
planes.
see any.
Cool. Let's start a turn to the left so you can start using your control column and then you should actually put one.
Should I
put
be
your
pulling
feet on the
back a little
pedals.
bit?
Don't pull back too much yet. Just wait till the nose, if it starts to drop, we'll
Because
pull
when you
back.
turn, it'll start to dip, right?
That's right, because we'll get heavier, so you get a little bit of G.
Yeah. So I feel the pedals now.
Yeah, so push the pedal in the direction of turn slightly, to the left one.
The left one? I can't reach it.
I'll do it for you.
No, I got it.
How difficult does this feel to
Not
like,
very
keep this
difficult,
in-
which is why I think it's like, I mean, this is definitely one of the most fun things I've done in a while. It's just like, it's just weird, like saying you flew in a plane, but it's like not as difficult as I expected.
Let's do a turn to the right. So we're gonna check for traffic first, though, before we turn.
Got to shoulder check it.
Yep, literally a shoulder check.
Okay,
to
and
the
I'll
right.
push on the right pedal a little bit,
A little bit on the right pedal.
and then I'll bring the nose up just a bit.
Yeah, it's almost like you've done this before. What happened? Were we doing it before we started filming?
I don't know. I can barely drive a car, so should I try to get a flight license? I think it's more fun to do this because I saw all the pre-check flight stuff that
Go a
you
little
do.
more.
And I'm like, I don't think I'm responsible enough to keep up with that.
That's it. We're getting close to our final destination, and the seatbelt sign has been turned on for landing. Justin, we'll turn the spotlight over to you one more time to take us home. Is there anything, well, say anything that you want to tell the world, and then tell the world how to find you.
So if you guys want to watch our videos, it's at youtube.com/JustinSay, or you could also go on Instagram, justin.tse. And if you want to check out some of the Airbnb properties and stay at them in Victoria, it's at featurecollection.ca. And the clothing brand is Kinsville, which is located at 543 Johnson. But yeah, I think that's where you can go ahead and check us out. But our sole focus is YouTube. So that's where we're going to be posting content of the travels. And yeah, this is a really cool experience. It's definitely, it's easily one of the coolest things I've gotten to do. So thanks so much for having us.
That means a lot to me, man. Yeah, I appreciate it.
I'm sorry it took so long to respond.
For those that don't know, I sent Justin a DM like a year ago, and then we met 6 days ago, and then he's like, "Yo, I'm free on Sunday. You want to go up?"
Yeah, Faber gave you a little call. The connector here. Faber's like, "Yo."
We made it happen.
Yeah.
Not so bad. And then we got to take Tammy and Damien up at the same time with us as well. So thanks for joining us on air with Radio Chatter here, 9,500 feet. See you guys on the other side.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. You know exactly what to do. Fasten your seatbelts and subscribe for more.